This is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin from Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Barb Gulin provides her clients and prospects the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful strategies to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now here is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin.
Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Barbara Gulin, a little bit froggy, but I'm here today, along with my psychedelic friend, Tony Shore.
Yeah, if I move too fast, my shirt gets a little crazy on camera.
I know, for those of you watching us on video, and if you've never watched us on video, it's worth the trip over. No pun intended. For entertainment's sake, yeah, a trip. That my shirt is worth the trip. That's for sure. But I have the perfect face for radio, Barb. You know that. So that's what everyone tells me. I'm excited to be here, Barb, because every week I have so much fun doing this with you. You're so great, fun to talk to. And I know that's why clients and listeners who give you a call and meet with you to ask questions and talk to you about their finances. It's great because you really care about people and you want to help people. And that's why we do the show each week, to give good tips. And now any of our listeners out there who are federal employees will definitely want to listen to this show today, won't they? They will. They will. Yeah. Because we are talking about what they need to do to plan for retirement. Excellent. Excellent. And I know you have a federal employee retirement planning checklist that you've created, things they might not understand or realize correct? We do, because when you retire as a federal employee, most of the time you're entitled to a pension. Right. But that pension, even though on paper it says it starts the next month, you aren't going to receive it right away. Ah, okay. Okay. And initially, you're going to get what's called an interim pension, which means that they're only going to give you 60 to 80% of what they project you're going to get. And then eventually they're going to make the final pension determination and send you a catch-up check for all the money they should have paid you for those first few months that they didn't. It doesn't seem like a great system to me, Barb. That doesn't sound fair or good. It's a little antiquated. Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, why can't they just figure it out and give you a check within 30 days for the right amount? In their defense, they have to go back. Any unused sick leave is credited as service time. Some agencies have the option to buy out part of their sick leave and receive that as cash instead of being added to their pension. There are a lot of moving parts to it that takes some work, and unfortunately, they don't have the most up-to-date computer systems. Yeah, I've heard that. And honestly, I think that OPM is probably understaffed for the number of federal employees that are retiring. Oh, I am sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you take all of that into account, let's give everybody a little bit of grace. But I want my retiring federal employees to go into this eyes wide open and to have all their little ducks lined up in a row as much as possible. Right. So that it's easier for them to make that transition into retirement. And for most of my clients, we start their actual planning. Well, I say that we are obviously planning all the time with our clients, but we are planning for that retirement date. We start 1 year out from the day that they plan to retire. Sure. Because I want them to do things like, we're going to take a look at their current expenses and debt, figure out if they've got any other major purchases coming. Anything that would make sense to make before they retire rather than waiting until after retire. And most importantly, for those of you that are federal employees, I want you to go through and make sure you have a copy of each of your service form 50s, the SF50 form, because that is what OPM is going to use to calculate your pension.
And for those of you that are wondering how you're going to write all of this down and keep track of all of it, I'm going to make sure that our team puts a copy of a handout that we give all of our clients in the show notes. That is that retirement planning checklist, so that you'll have it all in front of you. You just focus on listening. You don't have to worry about taking a whole lot of notes today.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it'll be great if our listeners can get a copy of that retirement planning checklist. And if they can't find it attached and they want to get a copy or have questions, I know they can simply get a hold of you by calling your office, your team there, and you'll be happy to get that to them and answer any questions. And they should really be setting up a consultation with you to make sure they're not going to make any costly mistakes.
Yes. In fact, I was just meeting with somebody before we started recording the podcast. And he's like, how do I know if I need to take a 25% or a 50% survivor benefit on my pension? And he's getting ready to retire in about 10 years. And I said, we don't have to make that decision today. We won't make that decision until you're filling out your paperwork. We'll take a look at where you are financially at that time and see what makes the most sense.
Sure. Now, you're talking about federal benefit planning before retirement, at that 1 year out point. But I think we should note for our listeners and viewers that for overall retirement planning and your income, that's best to start the sooner rather than later, like in your
100%.
In your 50s. To make sure your assets are properly allocated, right?
Or even in your 30s and 40s. The sooner you start, the easier it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But for what we're talking about today, the specific employee benefit and retirement planning checklist, I think that's really wise. And again, I'm sure our viewers and listeners will have questions so they can simply give you a call. But what's next on the checklist? Where do you want to get going there?
The next we're going to look at is at 6 months before retirement.
Okay.
We want to be sure that you have 4 to 6 months of your expenses sitting in a savings account. Again, it's going to take 3 to 6 months before you're going to get your full pension from the federal government. For some of you, longer. I have a client who was divorced and remarried. His first wife was entitled to part of his pension. It was in the divorce decree, and it was a year before OPM had the calculations done and sent him any kind of pension check at all.
Wow. That's scary. So you want to make sure you plan ahead for that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yes. If you were divorced and if the divorce decree says that your former spouse is entitled to a portion of your pension, it's going to take a long time before you see a check. Sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Sure.
But at least now you know to prepare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important to know. And then this is, you're just illustrating why you need to work with a financial services professional like yourself who knows the ins and outs. You go through this retirement process and planning process every day of your life, where the rest of us are just going to go through it once. I like to say that because it's true. Yes. And so since we don't know, the average person out there doesn't know all of the ins and outs, and you can't take your buddy, your neighbor's word for it, or your brother or uncle's word for it. Your situation is unique. So work with a financial professional who knows all the ins and outs and will look at your personal situation from a professional and expert viewpoint. I want to point that out.
Right. And if I don't know the answer to your question, I work with a team of advisors that works almost exclusively in the federal benefits market.
Yes.
If I can't get an answer to a question, I know where to go to get the answer from somebody that I trust. I have also been known to dig through OPM's website, which is like a deep dive into the abyss of paperwork. True story.
It's not actual hell, but you can see it from there.
Close.
It's
yes.
close.
You can see the glow of the embers.
Yeah. The most I could spend there, I've been there and looked at it, and 5-10 minutes tops, maybe.
It is one of the most tedious websites I think that has ever been created.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, that's why we're going over this checklist today, Barb, and I'm glad you brought this to our attention. What's next on the checklist?
by the time we're 3 to 6 months out, well, three months out before retirement, I want you to schedule an appointment with your advisor again. Go over the accounts. Make sure you don't have to make any changes there. Okay. For most agencies, you have to submit your retirement paperwork within 60 days of when you plan to retire. A lot of them do it online now. When we initially came up with this checklist, you had to submit it by hand and you had to do it 90 days ahead of time. But now I think they are no longer accepting them unless you're within 60 days of retirement.
Oh, wow.
And I want you to keep a hard copy of that paperwork too, even though it's done electronically. Make sure you have a copy of it in hand.
Yeah.
Because you're going to want to follow up and make sure that it actually has been filed.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are 65 or older and retiring, this 90-day mark out is when you want to go ahead and apply for Medicare, potentially for Social Security, if you're not already collecting it, or if you want to start collecting it as soon as you retire. As a federal employee, you don't necessarily have to take Medicare Part B. More often than not, we advise that our clients do. And if you've got questions about that, I want you to reach out to us because it can be very costly if you don't elect Medicare Part B in the correct time frame. And you may still choose not to elect Medicare Part B, but I want it to be an informed decision, and I want you to know the consequences of whatever decision you make.
Yeah, that's that's important. And healthcare, nothing's 100% free when it comes to healthcare. You're going to end up spending a lot on healthcare in retirement, regardless of Medicare or the benefits you have. Typically.
Right. But as a federal employee, if you're on one of their fee-for-service plans, like Blue Cross Blue Shield or GEHA, if you choose to elect Medicare Part B, that health insurance company is going to work in conjunction with Medicare. They're going to waive your deductible. They're going to waive your co-insurance, and they waive the majority of your co-payments as well.
Wow.
The only time you get hit with a copayment is if you are getting a lot of chiropractic care that you're running through insurance, or if you require extensive physical therapy. If you exceed a certain number of visits per year with either of those, then you have to pay a copay. But other than that, everything else is waived. More often than not, it's worth the cost of Part B to go ahead and do that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I did not know that. That's really good to know.
Yes, but please don't make that decision independently unless you talk to a fiduciary.
Because it depends on your situation, and everybody's different. Just because one federal employee has that situation, another might not.
Right. And I don't want somebody walking away from here saying, Barb said, don't take Part B, because that's not what I said.
Yeah.
I said, you need to make a decision and weigh out the consequences, pros and cons, and see what makes the best.
Or that Barb said, I have to take Part B.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But for some people, they really should. Yeah.
Right. Now, postal workers do have to take Part B. Their union and their rules are a little bit different.
Sure.
So,
sure.
They have to.
You have to look at, and you have to work with somebody that knows the consequences, not just rumor or hearsay, a professional. And I know that you deal with this all the time. I think that's great. What's the next item on the checklist?
Okay. The next item is, once you retire, if your annual leave isn't included on your final paycheck, you should receive that 14 to 21 days after you separate from service. If you don't get that check in that time frame, then you need to get on the phone with HR and make sure that they're actually showing you as being retired. I had a client who, back when we had to bring in the paperwork into HR manually, she brought in her paperwork. She called me. She retired at the end of December, and she called me in February. And she's like, am I going to start getting some money soon? Because it's starting to run low. And I was like, well, so-and-so, did you get your vacation check? She's like, I didn't get my vacation pay yet. I'm like, hon, you need to call tomorrow morning, and you need to make sure that you're showing up as retired in the system. And sure as there's a heaven, she was not retired in the system. They said they didn't have her paperwork. she had to drive to downtown Kansas City with her copy of the paperwork that she had retained and get it filed and start the process all over again.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is. It is. And thankfully, she had the savings and the means where it wasn't a crisis
right
for her. But, for some people, I've had some people tell me that they can't afford to retire because they are spending every bit of their paycheck, have no way to save that extra money, and won't be able to go that 3 months with an interim or no pension at all, that they'll go under, which is a very sad situation in and of itself.
Yeah.
But, you need to be prepared, and you need to understand that when you retire, as much as the paperwork says your pension starts the next day, it's going to be a while before you see a check. And I want my clients to be prepared and ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really want to be able to combat that and be prepared ahead of time so you don't have a tough situation there. Good point. This is a great checklist. And again, listeners, if you want to reach out to Barb or set up a consultation to talk about this, you just need to pick up the phone and call 913-553-6222. That's 913-553-6222, or go to safeharborfpg.com. The web address is safeharborfpg.com. Now, we're talking about federal employees retirement planning checklist. What's next on that checklist that we need to know about?
After you've retired, for those of you that are under the age of 59 and a half, that are retiring at minimum retirement age with at least 30 years of service. First of all, thank you for your service. When somebody talks to you about rolling over your thrift savings plan, I want you to remember that if you roll it all over, you won't be able to access any of it until you're 59 and a half without a 10% early withdrawal penalty. But if you're over the age of 55, over the age of 50, if you're a law enforcement employee, then any money that you leave in TSP, you have access to. You'll have to pay the taxes on it if you were participating in the traditional, but you can pull that money out and just pay the income taxes on it and not the penalty. So make sure when a planner is putting together your financial plan that they take that part into account and leave some money in TSP for you. Even if you don't think you're going to need it, leave some there just in case there's an emergency.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. And I know that there are so-called financial planners out there. They call themselves that, but they don't understand themselves necessarily how it works. And they just want to get all your money maybe into, let's roll it all into an IRA or traditional or Roth. And that's how I do it with everyone. Well, it's different because you don't want to have to, if you need that money. And it can
be an easy mistake for a planner to make.
Yeah.
But this is your money, and it's important for you to understand the rules and for you to know how the rules work so that if you're working with somebody, you can protect yourself against a mistake like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
So, it's just one of those things where, you'll know that you are retired if you're logging into TSP and you're under the age of 59 and a half until they show you as being retired in the system. The only type of withdrawal that will be available to you is a hardship withdrawal. You do not want to take a hardship withdrawal. Okay.
Why not?
Well, it has different consequences around it. If you were still participating in the TSP, if you were still an employee, you wouldn't be able to participate in TSP for a minimum of 6 months after you take a hardship withdrawal. If you're pulling the money out for an emergency, then, obviously they're like, you need to get your financial house in order. And before you consider a hardship withdrawal, I want you guys to consider a loan against your TSP. The interest rate you will pay is about what the G fund is paying, which right now is somewhere between around 4%, maybe a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
It's the cheapest loan you'll be able to get.
Interesting. But at the same time, I know you've always said, Barb, that a retirement account is for retirement. You should not access that money before you're retired if at all possible.
It is not an ATM. It is not a bank account.
No.
Now, sometimes it makes sense. If you're buying your first home, probably makes sense. Okay. Hopefully you can save the money outside of that. But sometimes you run across a deal and you just got to strike while the iron's hot. I understand it. And there are provisions in the tax code that allow you to take money out for things like that.
First-time home buyer. Yes. Yeah, I know that certain 401ks or traditional IRAs will allow you to take money out before you're 59 and a half if you're a first-time home buyer and meet certain qualifications.
Right. But, I would encourage you to work with a financial advisor.
Don't take any money out of a retirement account without talking to Barb or a financial professional who's a fiduciary who's looking out for your best interest, because you can make some really costly mistakes doing that, can't you?
You can. And a financial professional might be able to show you a different way to approach it. Or help you find a way to rework your spending plan, because we don't use the word budget here.
Right. The B word is bad. Yeah.
To rework your spending plan to show you where you've got that money to save to make that home purchase or that other major purchase that you're looking at.
Yep. Exactly. Well, and that's a word to the wise there as well. And we've been having a lot of them. What's another checklist item?
We are about at the end of it here, but I'm just going to run through the questions that I encourage all of my federal employees to ask themselves before they retire.
Okay.
And if you have trouble answering these questions, then please reach out to us. Call us at 913-553-6222, and we'll help you set up a complimentary consultation, and we'll help you figure out if you're on track or if you've got to make some course corrections for your own retirement. The first one is, will my pension be large enough to cover all of my expenses? If there is a gap, how am I going to cover that? How much of a survivor pension should I choose? Do I need additional life insurance? And do I need to keep the federal life insurance when I go into retirement? How should I use my TSP in retirement? When should I take my Social Security benefit? At 62, full retirement age, or 70? And should I get Medicare Part A and Part B? All of those questions are ones that you need to have answers to before you're sitting in front of your retirement paperwork.
And don't go it alone, or trust your neighbor or a coworker. You've got to work with a professional like yourself, Barb. Great show today, by the way. Very informative. And again, if people want to get this federal employees retirement planning checklist so they can check off the boxes, see what questions to be asking when they meet with you, all they have to do is give you a call. I know they can set up a consultation. That number is 913-553-6222, or go to safeharborfpg.com, right?
Yep. And we'll be glad to help people out.
All right. Well, Barb, great show today. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. And that does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barb Gulin.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to Anchor Your Retirement. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound retirement plan. For more information, please contact Barb Gulin at Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. Call 913-553-6222 or visit them online at anchoryourretirement.com.
Advisory services are offered through Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas. All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.